Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us online for this reading, curated by Sham-e-Ali Nayeem and featuring over 20 writers reading from their work. My name is Lily Philpott, and I am the Programs Manager at the Asian American Writers Workshop, a national nonprofit organization dedicated to uplifting and empowering Asian diasporic literature and storytelling. Tonight's event is titled Our Existence is a Rebellion, and the readings you'll hear will explore the role that writers and poets play in helping the world find its way in a time of genocide. You'll hear poems of resilience and resistance in solidarity with Indian Muslims, Dalits, Adivasis, and other marginalized communities in India, envisioning a world that is sustainable, just, and free. Tonight, I have the honor of introducing our first reader, Sham-e-Ali Nayeem. This event would not have been possible without Sham-e-Ali, who curated the roster of writers you'll hear from momentarily and generously gave her time and energy in support of this important project. Thank you so much, Sham-e-Ali. We could not have done this without you. Over to you.
Hello, my name is Sham-e-Ali Nayeem. I am a poet, multidisciplinary artist, and sound practitioner with South Indian Shia Muslim roots. I joined Asian American Writers Workshop today for this special reading to spread awareness about the terrifying and dangerous situation unfolding in India, with threats of state-sanctioned violence and repression endangering the lives of many Indian Muslims, Dalits, Christians, indigenous Adivasis, those in occupied Kashmir, and those from other marginalized communities in India. For many, to simply live, to be, and to exist is a resistance. Our existence is a rebellion. In grim and critical moments in the world, we turn to poets and writers. Legendary poet June Jordan has said, "So poetry becomes a means for useful dialogue between people who are not only unknown, but silent to each other. It produces a dialogue among people that guards all of us against manipulation by our so-called leaders." Today, as a powerful act of resilience, we come together to ask ourselves, what role do writers and poets play in helping us find our way in times of genocide? We have invited over 30 poets and writers who generously share their work to grapple with this question. With poetry and writing as our balm, we hope to resoundingly stand in solidarity with Muslims, Dalits, Christians, Adivasis, Sikhs, and caste-oppressed marginalized communities impacted by Indian state-sanctioned violence. Simultaneously, we resoundingly stand in solidarity with Black and indigenous communities here impacted by state-sanctioned violence. What we offer here today are poems and writings that serve as dialogue, that in June Jordan's words, will guard us all against manipulation by our so-called leaders. Poetry and writing serves as a means to resist genocide and the states that sanction them. Long live poetry. I'm going to start by sharing a poem by Faiz Ahmed Faiz, translated by the great Agha Shahid Ali from one of my favorite books titled The Rebel's Silhouette. This poem is called A Prison Evening. Each star a rung. Night comes down the spiral staircase of the evening. The breeze passes by so very close, as if someone just happened to speak of love. In the courtyard, the trees are absorbed refugees embroidering maps of return on the sky. On the roof, the moon, lovingly, generously, is turning the stars into a dust of sheen. From every corner, dark green shadows in ripples come towards me. At any moment, they may break over me like the waves of pain each time I remember this separation from my lover. This thought keeps consoling me. Though tyrants may command that lamps be smashed in rooms where lovers are destined to meet, they cannot snuff out the moon. So today, nor tomorrow, no tyranny will succeed. No poison of torture make me bitter, if just one evening in prison can be so strangely sweet, if just one moment anywhere on this earth. This next poem is titled Show Us Your Papers. I wrote it 2 years ago in response to India's discriminatory Citizenship Amendment Bill. Show us your papers. What paper could prove every buried ancestor, every story on each brick, every seed that became the tree, every street's ghost? In this country, no evidence of humanity is left, no certificate, no soul. In this country, papers become dust, become soot, become flooded, and disintegrate into nothing. In this country, 220 million people were born before nation state, before borders, generations of Muslims that never left. In this country, stars witness Muslim, Dalit, and Adivasi births in nameless clinics and rooms. No papers to prove the marrow and soul of a land. In this country, paperless people of the earth say, "This place is mine. Can you not see we birthed it?" What paper could prove umbilical cord to earth, memorized forest, an index of the river's moods, the land's fingerprint on each rib cage? This next poem is called River Musi from my book titled City of Pearls. City of Pearls is a nickname of Hyderabad, which is the city that I was born. River Musi. My beginning lies by the River Musi, bisecting my birthplace between old and new city, tributary and life source to a city of pearls. Musi flows like a thin fissure in a heart now split in two. Polluted river swells and recedes, streaking oily rainbow ripples over glossy water. South of the river, old city, with my father's home and its Shia shrines, heart and eyes, memory of floods and earth that cradles rebellious bones. North of the river, Malapali, with my mother's home and its winding streets, lungs and gut and breath that does not remember when the sky dips low to kiss you. On some other earth, under a different sky, I dream you. Do you remember me? Your daughter, born at sunset, a beginning of evening. No matter how far, whatever bridge I cross, I kneel by your banks and tenderly cup you in my hands. I love you. At the River Musi, my city becomes whole.
My name is Sanam Sharif. I am a queer Muslim Indian poet, and I'm gonna read a couple poems today in response and in resilience to the anti-Muslim violence that is happening all over India. I'm going to start with a poem that I wrote in 2020 when the pogrom was happening in Delhi, and it's in a poetic form called the Pantoum, in which the lines in each stanza repeat in a specific pattern. So this is called Pogrom, February 24th, 2020, Delhi. The man in the photo is dead, and I am touching his face, moments before its opening, through the mind, through and through. I am touching his face as a seed reaches its bloom through the mind, through and through, his blood on my hands, his red rind. Like a seed reaching to bloom, I know we are separate and the same. This blood in my hands, his red rind, his body a mosque dismembered of God. We know we are separate and the same. We who are Muslim, who kneel to pray in his body, a mosque dismembered of God. I didn't ask for answers. I begged to be Muslim, to kneel in prayer, head bowed against the next word. I didn't ask for answers. I begged. The man in the photo is dead. That's the first poem, and I'll read another one which is in the same series during the same pogrom, and so this one is titled Pogrom, February 26th, 2020, Delhi. The dying, backlit at my fingers, resurrect in my dreams. My dreams resurrect the dying, they die at my fingers. A trigger finger points at God, then every grave a prayer rug, every breath prayer. A Muslim boy opens his mouth and a swarm of bullets riddles the air gasping for air. Everywhere seems ablaze with a rung of light, the dying are promised, and I set out to render the light but keep kneeling in blood. The dying, backlit at my fingers, resurrect in my dreams. A swarm of mothers, their mouths howling empty bowls. Empty bowels rub the children down to bone. Barren wombs gather tumbleweeds and grief. Grief gathers, but no gatherings. The grieving, backlit at my fingers, tell the story of a brother on his way home from morning prayers. All that's left of Anwar is his foot. They will find a way to bury this, as they always do. Thank you.
My name is Alexis Pauline Gums, and I am honored to offer a poem in solidarity with the Our Existence is Rebellion movement. This poem is called Parana, which is a Carib word. The indigenous Makusi group uses this name to mean the Milky Way, galaxy, and also the ocean. This is the poem I wrote the day I learned that. Laugh when they speak to you of difference, as if the desert is not ocean, as if the ocean is not sky, as if the stars will not taste of salt when you reach and put them in your mouth. Cry when they preach separation. Who would make of your skin a warning? Who would make of their skin a barrier? Who would make up a color for sacrifice, as if the sun don't peek through our pores? I will call you by the first name of my lungs. I will remember you by my heart's own pace. You who would not know sky if you were breathing it. You who cannot feel love slapping you in the face. Again, thank you. and much love.
Hi everyone, my name is Yashika Dutt. I'm a Dalit journalist and the author of Coming Out as Dalit. As history bears witness that whenever authoritarian regimes threaten to take over the powers of marginalized people, the role of writers, authors, journalists, and poets becomes all the more crucial. I'm extremely thankful to Asian American Writers Workshop for giving us this opportunity to not only shed a light on the increasing state violence against Dalits, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, tribal communities in India, but also in our own small way, help hold those in power accountable. Today, I'm going to be doing a reading from my book, Coming Out as Dalit. The chapter is called The Danger of the Single Narrative. I started the Documents of Dalit Discrimination Tumblr because all I saw in the media and popular entertainment was stories about victimized Dalits or those undeserving of reservation or affirmative action. There were no stories about people like me. Among the many messages I received after I came out as Dalit in 2016, several expressed amazement that I could speak English. It was almost as if without going through horrific violence or abuse, or growing up in extreme poverty in a remote rural area, I couldn't possibly be Dalit. In her immensely popular 2009 TED Talk, Nigerian author Chimamanda Adichie recalls how, as a young girl, she was shocked to find out that a family member of her domestic helper made beautiful baskets. All she had heard of his family so far were that they were poor. The idea that they could also make something beautiful had never even occurred to her. Even though she only knew one story about the domestic helper's family, their poverty, it became the story that defined their lives. This is what Adichie calls the danger of a single story. When the rest of the country only hears of Dalits as suffering victims or reservation grabbers, it becomes their single story. They never see Dalits as actual people with full lives. When I wrote the note in which I came out as Dalit in 2016, I was sitting in a comfortable chair in a cafe in Chelsea, New York, far away from my caste roots. Even before I wrote the note, I had decided that I wasn't going to work in an Indian newsroom again. So by outing myself as a Bhangi from a manual scavenging lower caste, I decided that I didn't feel like I was putting my career on the line. If some people decided I was less worthy or qualified because of my caste, I simply didn't have to work with them. I took a risk, but only because it was a limited one. But there are many Dalit journalists who don't have that choice. To continue working in the Indian media space, Dalit journalists must either fall in line, especially while covering Dalit issues like reservation, or like me, keep their heads down and their caste well hidden. Most media houses are brimming with upper caste journalists, editors, and heads of departments, but they tend to think of themselves as above caste. But this declaration falls flat anytime there is a discussion on the number of Dalit journalists in Indian media. After the anti-Mandal protests in 1990, it took an outsider, more specifically an African American journalist who was familiar with the strength of minority voices in covering minority issues, to raise that question. Kenneth J. Cooper, then South Asia correspondent for the Washington Post, was looking into a story of an argument between Bahujan Samaj Party leader Kanshiram, who is also Dalit, and his workers and some journalists. Kanshiram famously mistrusted the media, calling it Manuvadi and biased. Cooper wanted to get a Dalit journalist's opinion to fill him in on the context and background of the argument. But he couldn't find one. So he turned to senior journalist B.N. Unyal, who worked at the Pioneer newspaper in India. Unyal couldn't find a single Dalit journalist either. Suddenly, I realized that in all the 30 years that I've worked as a journalist, I'd never met a fellow journalist who was a Dalit too. No, not one. Unyal wrote in his column for the newspaper, The Pioneer. He checked with editors in other newsrooms. Instead of supporting his quest, many editors turned on him for dividing the journalistic community. One accused Unyal of showing off that he was the only one who was not casteist. An editor at a Hindi newspaper complained that Cooper knew nothing about Indian history and was simply trying to malign the country by asking that question. Another editor suggested that journalists shouldn't be screened based on their caste. The truth is that in the job market, journalists are screened based on their caste. Academic J. Balasubramaniam spoke to a Dalit journalist who reported that at his interview with a Tamil daily in India, he was first asked about his hometown and then if he was one of the upper caste Pillamars who were the dominant community there. When he admitted that he was in fact from one of the lower castes, the journalist was turned down for the job. Unyal even tried to investigate the number of Dalit journalists by checking the accreditation index of the Press Bureau of India. Out of the 686 names listed, 454 were upper castes. Of the remaining 232, he called 47 at random and discovered none were Dalit or admitted to being Dalit. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Hi, my name is Hala Alian, and this is called How to Survive Your Body. 1. Turn it into a house. Meet yourself at the door, say welcome. Say, I'm sorry I haven't vacuumed for a while. The summer was rough, but there are love letters under the floorboards and enough rooms in this body for all of us. 2. Turn it into a bottle. Become addicted to your own heartbeat, and then bless the mother that made it. Bless the rain frizzing your hair. Bless the womb that twice now hasn't gotten it right. Bless what sheds and dies and returns. 3. Make it into a garden. Remember seasons. Remember harvest. Remember that to love the orchid, you must first love the monsoon. It can't always be April, and a thing doesn't have to feel good to be saving your life, like your heart. Beating furiously is just a seedling trying to break soil. Let it panic. It knows what it's doing. It has seen you through gunfire and evacuation ships, through 4 coastlines and 3 broken loves. This heart has walked you through wars. You can forgive it a little shakiness. 4. Hold your body like an animal more used to kick than love. When your friend says, us daughters of refugees, we've got that fight or flight in our blood, say yes. Say 1948, say Thawra, say passport, say 1990, say I remember the road from Baghdad to Damascus and we left my father behind. Say I've been memory since, say I've been running since, say I learned at the knee of colonizers. Know the word for nostalgia in French before I know it in Arabic. Know how to erase myself out of a textbook. Say a person can't inherit a world on fire and not grow to practice arson on herself. 5. Turn your body into a language and forget it. Turn it into an arrow and take aim. Listen to your mother. You can take panic and birth a daughter from it. You can take a daughter and birth land from her. It's coded in your DNA. You have your uncle's eyes, your grandmother's heart. Hate this body all you want, but it is still the best living artifact of your ancestors. Every heave of your lungs, every sob is a goddamn miracle, you daughter of your baba, of your mama, you daughter of refugees, you refuge. Every breath is a revolution, is a flag put back together from ash, is a way of keeping Palestine alive, and Damascus and Akka, and you say you don't believe in borders, so why Are you still cutting yourself up like this? 6. Turn your body into a country and reclaim it. Turn it into God and surrender. Straighten your back, lift your chin, dread the morning and greet it anyway. Do it for your grandmother. Do it for the daughter who may or may not come, who you may or may not name after map or desert flower or Arab night. Say hallelujah. Say hallelujah, and you are museum, monument to everything you have survived. You are resurrected. You are uncle's eyes and Palestine's voice and grandmother's heart, and there is enough history, enough memory, enough rooms in this body for all of us.
Hi everyone, I'm Qasim Ali, and I'm glad to be participating in this project. I'm going to read you a poem from my book Inquisition, and it's a poem called Ioannis Ritsos. And Ioannis Ritsos, of course, is a great 20th century Greek poet, and one of the things he's very famous for is his political solidarity with poets around the world, including the great Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish. In fact, when Darwish and the rest of the leadership of the Palestinian people fled Beirut in 1982 after the Israeli military attacks, they went to Athens, and they went by boat. And Ritsos was there to welcome Darwish to Athens. And there's a line of Darwish's poem that is the epigraph for my poem on Ioannis Ritsos. And it's a line, it goes like this: Athens was welcoming to those who had come from the sea. And this is a line of Darwish translated by Fadi Judah. It appears in a poem that Darwish wrote about Ritsos while he was staying in Pablo Neruda's house in Chile. So I want to read this poem because it is about losing a home. It's about not belonging or feeling you no longer belong to the country that is your home. And as Darwish himself said, Palestine in my poems is not merely Palestine, it's a metaphor for an aesthetic condition much grander than that, in that aesthetic condition of alienation and loneliness. And no particular type of loneliness is more powerful than feeling alienated from what you think of as your own homeland. So here is the poem called Ioannis Ritsos. Ioannis, you held him in the glare of the diamonded sea, unteaching him his practical mantra of liberation. Maybe seeing in him a son to take care of you in your loneliness. Loneliness varnished by your detention in the house made of flower stems that thrust through the rocks in the prison yard, its roof made of unscannable lines of rain. You revealed to him the sound of the rusty hinged door, how it would swing sadly open and reveal no homeland beyond it all. He came from the sea dragging his anklets of keys, and so did you teach him then how all the old locks and houses of his hometown were already broken? Ioannis, in the end, he rinsed the last of the coast road's dust from his body after a lifetime of pressing his language into lines of poetry and prayer and prestidigitation, tired of praising mosques in which he could not pray. The same morning I was forbidden to pray by the guard at the Mezquita of Cordoba. He woke up in Houston, Texas, and went to a mall food court to meet for the first and last time in his life his translator. The words they spoke to one another were the same as those I saw in stone fragments on the floor of the archaeological dig at Medinat al-Zahra, the ruined capital of West looking east toward the cities left behind. That city had remained buried in a field for 1,000 years. The palace and throne room had been torn apart. the rubble of the mosaics now being painstakingly reassembled piece by piece, unlike the villages of Palestine disassembled down to stone. Giannis, what did you say to him that blue afternoon when the stone canoe landed and he arrived in another place that would be home and not home? And in Cordoba, meanwhile, the story of his death flashed across the morning news, scrolling across the screen from clay to nothing. But let's let the sea have the last word. The sea he crossed to come to you, or the one that sparkled off the coast of Chile when he, in Neruda's house, remembered you, or the sea that rained lightly down as the poet and his translator huddled together over cheap food court coffee to converse in a shopping mall in Texas, of all places, though it could have been Athens or Palestine or Neruda's house, at least as good as any mosque in the world, so long as there was coffee and poetry and the sound of rain. Rain in the shape of the river, rain in the shape of a broken lock, rain in the shape of long since written verses, while the translator of lost homelands makes from the sound of butterfly wings rain in the shape of the dark furnace of days. Thank you for listening. That's from Inquisition by Qasim Ali, an Indian, with cover art by Ali Qasim, a Pakistani. Thank you.
My name is Adiba Shahid Talukdar, and I'll be reciting a poem I wrote after reading a Los Angeles Times headline in December of 2019. For Muslims in India, entire neighborhoods have gone empty in fear. The poem is titled, "In God's Absence, Devotees Empty the Holy Shrine." My Lord, delight in this. We have ripped the tyrants' tongues, lashed and bled their bodies for holy. The dawn's thick wound ripens. Look, blood pours forth, spills as glory, as light. And in this red flames glimmer our rise, murder of what pours filth into our waters. Ours, the sky of stones. We grasp our spades, our iron rods, our butcher's knives, blacken their mirrors and eyes, cleave from them their raised fingers. Then, every house, shrine, and body, empty them all of breath.
Thank you so much for putting together this very important event and allowing me to participate. My name is Bao Phi. I'm a poet and children's book writer from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and a Vietnamese refugee. Um, I won't take up too much of your time today. I'm just going to write a short poem called Adrift. Again, thank you. A shipping container of rubber duckies made in China for the United States washed overboard in 1992, and some of them had traveled and washed ashore over 17,000 miles over 15 years. Let's go ahead and assume it's yellow. What little of science I know, its plastic skin invincible against salt water, but not the sun. We can only ask so much. Will it fade or brown? What I mean to say is I would want one of these for my kid, its internal clock set to the mercy of the currents that have been predictable for centuries. But mercy is not the word anyone would choose. Sometimes not making sense and just floating are the same. Each wave is its own beginning and ending. Through international waters, you could have caused an incident, no one knowing you, never reaching the hands that hoped for you. Rough immigrant, or free refugee, floating, flagless, fading, border, stamped with words, but not your name.
Hi, my name is Rajiv Mahabir, and I'm going to be reading some poems tonight from Between Us Not Half a Saint, which is a collaborative chapbook that I wrote with the poet Rushi Vyas, who is based in Aotearoa in New Zealand. And so basically, this chapbook we created was based on mining the poetic structures of Sanskrit mantras to inject them with a kind of leftist progressive poetry in which we contest the national right movements of both India and the United States. And this is, as we see an uptick in the kind of sectarian violence in South Asia, me being Caribbean and Rushi being subcontinental, but growing up in the United States, we felt as though it was important for us to use our voices and to use our platforms to write poetry against this fervor. And so I'll begin by reading a little bit called The Path of Pot, and this is the foreword, in which Rushi and I collaborate and write. The following poems are a correspondence between two poets responding to the growing fanaticism that trickles down first as a steady, infrequent drip, then as a deluge from a Hindu nationalist India to our diasporic spaces. We survive against a time of Trump in the United States and Modi in India, both politicians who inflame the hatreds of their constituencies. Religion, both of us have roots in Hindu thought and practice, became the entry point to our version of Jericho. Our poetic conversation begins with each of us mining a Hindu mantra for its syllabic structure, and to hang from that structure English language poems that draw from the various news sources that we reference here. From ecologies of diaspora to Ramayana to Ambedkarite essays, it is our hope that our formal constraints allow us to speak out to show what dissent is democracy, to show that dissent is democracy, is release from samsara. Here we use our poems as trumpets. May the walls come down crashing. The first poem I'm going to read is called Gayatri. Bright Bhai, why to shrink echo the tones of shrike in my mouth? This must be the end times or Kal Yug, believe me. The American birds are leaving 3 billion at once. Don't rest when biologists say some avis adapt to living around humans. Weren't 4 Vedas revealed as birdsong from a Kashmiri mountain once upon a nationalist? Look, the ills of nation chill. That country where the wise one awoke from Maya on August 5th invades the north. What web of mantras joins me to you when this carved up earth bleeds under siege? The Constitution settles its foreign body in the gullies, grows a plump breast on someone else's saffron petals. Look, let's run through the grove, the birding grounds crying, wake up, jago, utkar. And this was in response to India's militarized takeover of Kashmir on August 5th. This next poem is called Disputed Religious Site, and it begins with an epigraph. In November of 2019, the Indian courts allow the Modi administration to construct a Ram temple at the site of the demolished 16th century Babri Masjid, built by the Mughal ruler Babur on August 5th, 2020. On August 5th, 2020, they broke ground for the mandir. Jai Shri Ram, now God of murder. What is real Rushi? The forest is now deforest. Home, its own undoing. Trench lotuses hard as dicks, release truth. Even the skinks and hawks shrink back into scarcity. What of Shanti? In Ayodhya's sacked Mughal masjid, vultures scrawl Ram on new temple bricks. Brother, from this mandir of burning, each sunrise mantra shoots itself a poisoned arrow. Each snake prays, the unlit path sparkles Maya. The last short poem that I'm going to read for you is called A Mixed Caste Queer Sings the Blues. A machine-crying bird's voice plumes a phantom, my core song chords erased for the red phantom. On the far shore, the blue god twists my wrists. In his image I crawl samsara, a phantom. I trace his footprints to the kingdom of death on wet sand. Is divinity but a phantom? Once I believed in truth to trump the wounded bird of country, every wing's phantom. With prayer beads I repeat, justice, justice. God bends Maya's hedge towards its own phantom. If my body churs a sitar's cracked tumba, then what music wrestles this profane phantom? Vish means poison in Hindi. How is Vishnu preserver of anything but caste's phantom? Basavana writes, gods, gods, so many, no place left for a foot, or just a god's phantom. That foolish bhai thirsts after Ram Rahim, who does not reach back. Your longing self, a phantom. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Seema Reza. I am the author of the memoir When the World Breaks Open and the poetry collection A Constellation of Half-Lives. I'll be reading two poems from A Constellation of Half-Lives. The first poem is called Military Aged Males, and it's part of a series addressed to an imagined, though not quite fictional, woman named Khadija, who is a mother, like I am, living in a place of war. Dear Khadija, yesterday I stood in his bedroom and examined him. Uncalloused hands, stubbled cheeks, thick curls, unlined brow, then pulled back the covers and shook him from his dreams. He's become a military-aged male, has registered, and if selected and given a gun to point, he'll shoot because he hasn't got a choice. And the second poem is titled Allahu Akbar. I didn't teach him the tender threes of ablution, palms cupping water and dragging again, again, and again, lowering clean forehead to earth under the high dome. I never taught him to remove his shoes and raise stiff hands alongside his face, turn side to side, shoulder to shoulder with boys like him, thumbing flimsy, holy pages. He'll learn on the job to beg for mercy, on a classroom floor in this town, or in the smoke of gunfight on distant soil. I raised him without faith in a God who could save us, but does not want to. Thank you.
All right. Hello, my name is Mahogany L. Brown. I am a poet, writer, organizer. I'm the executive director of Just Media, artistic director of Urban Word NYC, and the first poet in residence at Lincoln Center, which is to say I take writing and the word seriously. So I'm very, very thankful for this opportunity to share a piece. for Sister Sonia Sanchez in 3 parts. 1, Cento. Forgive me if I laugh. You are so sure of love. You are so young, and I am too old to learn. Can you tell the morning stars, the air so sweet, river dark with sound, speech and breath? Can you tell the stars and the ocean, she is a holy one? Leaving trail of witnesses smiling. Amen, a woman. Our braided spaces, glass gone mad, yellow razor thin light, shiny sugar and pure woman. Conceal a symphonic shudder, 1,000 sermons, conjugated pain. Wild stars, southern eyes bloom in the night. We taste the blue midnight, stars between my teeth. Black magic is you, caught in my voice. It is a wild sea. Love shifts the air and we blossom black. Now, picture a woman, her spine, her rotating the earth, her leaning into our birth cloud eyes, jumping rivers, inhaling moons. Imagine her. Free. 2, what I don't know. I ain't known I was worth the snarl and spit, this name, this black girl gone, black woman arrival. I ain't never known I was worth fighting for until I read a Sonia Sanchez poem. 3, root workers. We roll up sleeves and bend from the knees. We sing beneath our breath, it's gonna be heavy. We still swing big despite the justice system of letdown, and we still show up on time. We arms open. We hearts open. We hands open. And we love the way we fight until empty, until sun replenishes, until laughter fills the well. We return to the front line. We hammer. We hatchet. We ready and ready to love a life. We ready to rock a stone cold gaze into dust. The black girl you watched harassed is someone's daughter. The black woman you watched berated is someone's daughter. There is no redemption in swinging out of your weight class. There is no demise. There is no glory in the demise of our black women. We be the daughters. We be the bridge makers. We be the pot servers. We be the cleanup crew. We be the aunties. We be the writers. We be the spell weavers. We be the holiest of holy. We pray for you. We double-edged women, we gather like a fist. We gather like a fist of freedom papers. We coal of storm and glory. We a country surrounded by ghosts. We pray for ourselves. We watch our sisters pray for we. We blessed in this knowing. We black palms open and up. We black spirit and divine. We ain't never been steel bars. We ain't never been glass ceiling. We ain't never shuck, nah, we saunter the testimony. We clean the spirit. We manifest, and we ain't leaving till we choose. We be the writers. We be the daughters. We be the daughters. And we got root work to do. Thank you so much.
My name is Seher Romani, and I'm going to read my poem, A Ghazal in Urdu. Bookshelves were sparse. No Iqbal, no Fez, just translated verses of Quran in Urdu. But film songs lilted room to room, darling couplets spawned in Urdu. Coney Island Avenue stretches with dollar stores and auto shops. Before towers fell, it was Little Pakistan, Brooklyn's John in Urdu. First memory in English. My father orders spaghetti from a waitress. Foreign flowers blossom in his mouth. Spellbound, I look on in Urdu. Friday afternoons, cars spill across a bleached suburb. In the mosque's parking lot, look, prayers drawn in Urdu. My mother sent her mother letters in thin blue envelopes, dispatches on miscarriages and discount coupons in Urdu. Mughal Sarai vanished into Sanskrit, as did Allahabad and Habibganj, and tomorrow, another street, another monument erased, gone in Urdu. Every morning I wake to my lover's pale shoulders, green eyes. I see home in her, even if she only speaks a handful of nouns in Urdu. Dear Shahid, they ask me too, what does seher mean? Depends on tongue and accent. Magic in Arabic, dawn in Urdu. Thank you.
This poem is called Break Your Face, and it's a poem about healing. It is inevitable. Sometimes we break, like teeth and promises, bones and hearts, branch and ground, chaos and code, habits and faith. Sometimes we break. Sometimes we break open, like pods and doors, dawn and silence. Sometimes we break apart. Sometimes we break down. We are just pieces getting ready to disassemble ourselves into a fire. The future won't have us in it. If my ancestors taught me anything, it is that fire creates new life, an affirmation to let go, to make way for something else to take shape, something that maybe we have not felt before. Maybe a new sound, or one that you have always craved for, like sun rays stroking your skin. Maybe a new song, maybe a new feeling, or a different way to understand that what we have held once before, only now, its heavy is new. Its angles indent differently on our palm, its colors, its smell, a little bit familiar and reminds us of home. Home has a simple recipe. Some call for more laughing parents than canned meat. Some call for cups and cups of giggling grandfathers in bouncy castles, dashes of hand-holding, peeled Korean drama marathons, handfuls of lullabies once forgotten, and bowls of cut fruit spilling over, handed to you with luscious words like, I'm sorry, or sweet juicy ones like, I love you. But sometimes the ingredients are hard to come by, and you'll have to go look. So you float to the surface of your first memory when you were in water, scraping scales with the naga. It left lines on your torso to keep your secrets, to remember your purpose after you've sprouted feet.
Hi, my name is Tina Zafreen Alam, and I am a diasporic Bangladeshi poet currently based in Toronto, Canada. I wanted to thank the organizers of the event for giving me the opportunity to stand in solidarity today, and also for giving us the question, what role do writers and poets play in helping us find our way in a time of genocide? As a Bangladeshi, I have thought about genocide a lot, and though I don't always write explicitly about it, I think that question is really important. So I wanted to share this poem from my manuscript in progress. And even new moons promise return. Speak to you every day or night in any and every style of your choosing, and still there is no still. Stillness in the apex of fullness, in the shadow of your fall, every moment is moving. This isn't freedom, I am not free of need, needing you. This rhythm carries like backbone, stacked mobile and vital, stands me straight in the face of it. Beams shine wide across gold-brown cheeks. My moon reflects your light. Speak to you as I run rhythms, mouth words first. Recitations repeat like prayer, repetitions round as practice, practice being small in the tide. Let waves roll through cycling, as full moon, as movement, round as every time reminds me there are no ends, only rotations, only other ways back too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Asian American Writers Workshop, Jafri Nadeem and Sham-e-Ali Nayeem, for inviting me to contribute a poem to their video gallery of poetry in solidarity with persecuted minorities. I'm Shadab Ziz Hashmi, and the poem I'm reading is called Half Widows, a Qasida Cycle. This poem was published in the journal Paris Lit Up a few years ago. And here's the footnote that explains the title. Half Widows. Thousands of Kashmiri men have been unaccounted for during the decades-long military occupation of Kashmir. Their wives are called half widows. A half widow may remarry after 4 years if her husband doesn't return. So this poem is in 5 parts. Half Widows, a Qasida Cycle. Qasida of the tea house by the lake. Zephyr's saffron sigh hanging in window closed to news of Kashmir. Window unlocking almond and begonia birds that fly together to Dal, lake of the beautiful possible you drew every time they asked about a map or a mass grave. Stubborn dreamer, your porcelain waters resist a bloodied game. Climb the steps that lead to the tea house burnished with the glow of half widows, tea house of long-awaited men. Qasida of the bridesmaid's candle. Before the disappearance of the man who strikes a match with one hand, shields with care the candle with the other, while she lifts the copper stand, wax melting, a jewel traversing her forehead, closely missing the flame she carries. Before this bridesmaid sees his hand guarding her light, it seems they will remain haloed by wedding shimmer. He will pour her daily tea, cinnamon pink, satin drink, steam rising to balconies. Qasida of the Maina and the blind musician. The hills return the songs of the Maina and the blind musician with his brass tongs, which he plays to the drum hanging across his shoulder by a rope. He knows the stone fruits by size and shape, cherry, plum, apricot. Seasons by songbirds, time of the day by the type of tea, kahwa in the morning, salt tea in the afternoon with shirmal. He does not know it's green gold or cedar, nods to the gurgle of the samovar. Qasida of the anatomy of a letter. The minaret in your ribcage is banned, as is the muezzin in your breath, the scent of Eid feast. The mountain is your mother, her shoulders are calm, her heart is ample. Bring to her your art of braiding absence with the rose gold filaments of her forbearance. Bring all 7 orchards of the Sufis in a bottle of ink and a sheaf of paper. Scatter your hopes among the wisteria, dry, tear-sodden letters. Qasida of the charcoal burner. Bitter cold, you stay within whispering distance of the charcoal burner. Imagine your old swing on the chinar, reddening sky, leaping panther, pomegranate grove, abode of fairies. a boot kicking an oil lamp on a straw-laden boat. Someone has woven for this moment a shawl of mercy with a field of corn silk, a medallion of pearl buds. Someone has brewed gulabi chai with cardamom, adds cream. Someone watches over your wound. Thank you.
Peace, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Tayo Na, or Tayo Ibato. I'm a poet, writer, musician from Lenape-Ho-King, Canarsie Land, otherwise known as Queens, New York City. Thank you so much, Sham and the Asian American Writers Workshop, for having me, for your friendship, for all the work, the vision, the necessary work that is this event. Our existence is a rebellion. We are in solidarity. I felt very weighted by this topic, and felt like there weren't many poems or stories or songs that I had that could offer to this moment. So I was looking and looking, and I wanted to read this poem by Lee Young Lee called The Children's Hour. Soldiers with guns are at our door again. Sister, quick, change into a penny. I'll fold you in a handkerchief, put you in my pocket, and jump inside a sack, one of the uncooked rice. Brother Herbie, turn yourself into one of our mother's dolls on the living room shelf. I'll be the dust settling on your eyelids. The ones wearing wings are in the yard. The ones wearing lightning are in the house. The ones wearing stars and carrying knives are dividing our futures among them. Don't answer when they call to us in the voice of Nanny. Don't listen when they promise sugar. Don't come out until evening, or when you hear our mother weeping to herself. Thank you.
Portrait as a landscape. We walk a pair past eucalyptus trees. The sentries flock off the peach in the sky, frame the street smelling of crow shit. They dim the pink, usher us to the open-air theatre, where everywhere this summer they will screen 12 rapes. One for each week we are out of uniform, one for each cheap peppermint, one for each soda clear as rosewater, dense as glass. We walk a pair, slip-on socks fogged in red dust, orbiting what was once stone, as dogs do dogs, hands the hips, and we walk the anywhere walks. Our first fuck-offs slip out the edges of our anywhere mouths, tasting flint and silt, tasting the selvage between two girls sewn into the landscape, spliced as we are to cellulose, camphor, fiction. Strip over strip, we rate ourselves you for unrestricted public exhibition. Our talk sprawls across the street. We are a continent drifting into dusk in skirts. A ruffle too close, a downy arm far, far too far, past the single serve everything's just this once is, past the grotto frothing hibiscus over the Virgin's Cape, past velvet apostles overdressed for this emergency, each halo a hymen between man and his God. We talk fast, fast, too fast into each other, pull words like shell after wet shell from backswash. We draw us in our own image in fast forward.
the silage of the ocean dragging itself back from us girls, girls, girls. We talk and we loiter all summer, annexed into every garden we graze, called rose, rose, rose. Clasp coins into purses, pocket all the curses, one for each time we touch ourselves, for each time we speak of how laps dissolve, how a scene cuts, how a mountain range marks the cusp where one nation plunges into another. We just walk as girls do. Book bags grinding into the small of our backs, we talk to patch the shredded blouses, we cork the gut tumult in fear of salt or glance. We take it in our stride, we count to 12. For each time a sari is unreeled on screen from an anchor and beached near the navel, where the storyboard begins, pleats itself, and ends. We saunter into the grass, cooling the shape of us under a kite's scoot. We pierce the aperture into our anywhere feet, stud our knowing into the law of sallow, count fireflies. Soft, soft, lit, lit, soft, soft, lit, lit. We envy their bellies blinking coal light. Wait for ours to project us, 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 us. The projector beam quivers all night. We sit, letting history catch up. But we have oiled our braids well to slip out of traps laid for us, since we've known that roads never go where roads claim to go, since we've known how to hopscotch, how to follow the marled marble into mud, how to wait to cross over until the hard-boiled sweet cracks mid-sentence like a frame into.
My name is Cynthia Dewi Oka, and I'm a poet. I will be reading a poem from my new book, A Tinderbox in 3 Acts, which is about the 1965 anti-communist genocide in Indonesia. I wanted to thank the Asian American Writers Workshop and Sham-e-Ali Nayeem for organizing this really important program in solidarity with Indian Muslims and caste-oppressed peoples in India. Fire. Say it isn't a country. Say it is a possibility visible from the harbor. As in, I could go anywhere. Like the moon, I have always wanted to change my life. To take for myself language I left in the sun's piss-pattered palm. This isn't a hand, it's the coral galaxia. That isn't a match, it's the spine of a faraway book. My bindings are cut. Read what you like. Consent is the rare glory of the sea. When you have dragged my mute windows through the streets, you will be tired. You will ask yourself, what other secrets can you hide inside me? Say life is a small thing to change. If there is a branch you cannot reach, throw a rope and struggle together. Say the jasmine goes wild for someone who wasn't even born. A country is a feeling. I am afraid I understand. It might leave you swinging, dark exclamation mark at the end of every reason. God, the people, the prophets, the prospect of prosperity, peace, the palace, the revolution, heroes of the revolution.
Zange Sulha. Dear friend, I cannot say what role writers and poets play to find our way in a time of genocide. I believe that search is best suited to what each poet, writer, or neither of these positions can remember in the midst of erasure. What we as writers and poets can do is illuminate our remembrances, whether archetypally, mythically, reflectively, visually, or otherwise, to the best of our ability, within the limitations of language and its rhetorical devices, to story a path, a way, a patterned pass. So I will now read from a pattern of past writings, captions, and notes to invoke remembrance. I woke up this morning to a red sunrise, and ash raining from the sky, an uncanny recurrence, a prescient descent. I am not interested in rearranging furniture on a sinking ship in my jihad right now. I'm saying I quit 5.5 years too late. Suddenly, it was just me and my mass. Allow the elation to give power to your energetic systems for the decay to come. The angel of death. You abandon everything that gives you the life you keep abandoning. You were falling out of yourself and you knew it. November 4th, 2020. Focus on the aperture opening, not closing. July 26th, 2020. May we remember our ancestors who equipped us with the tools we need to navigate our reality and be comforted by the infinite. August 30th, 2020. I'm looking for signs and symbols in the spin cycle, dancing with gravity. Beating a trapped vision free. I can't decide if I should mind my own mind or bury these musings and leave them with the earth. Ask a freak. Catch the spirit. Apparition. Rest. I stood misted at the base of a cliff, watching surfers meditate moonward, wondering if we all feel the heat stink erupting from the turning of land and consciousness, wondering if I'll ever see my friends again, praying my community ease in the form of miracles. In 2013, I quote Idris Shah, "All life is struggle," says the Sufi, "but the struggle must be a coherent one." Earth is a battle stage of choices, of delusions and divine interventions. Incubus megalomaniac lyrics. If I were your appendages, I'd hold open your eyes so you would see that all of us are heaven sent, and there was never meant to be only one. Hey megalomaniac, you're no Jesus. Wash your hands clean of yourself and step down. Their eyes trapped the lights no longer on earth, and the wonder of it all made them know love. Heart Sutra algorithm, hit publish. Rupture to rapture. To be wanted alive is a blessing. Watch what I will do with the life I have. In pain there is potential. The future belongs to those who can see it. I'm seeking what is waiting to be thought. What are we not seeing about ourselves? What lessons are we not willing to learn that it keeps happening? Unapologetically accepting both ends of the binary into oblivion. Raise your hand if you're willing to bring your insights into the public sphere. The declaration of interdependence. I don't want to tell people what to do, but I can make an appeal. Evolution can be so painful, but also erotic. I would hope writers and poets are just two of the many who join this endeavor, specifically the endeavor to remember. The gift of remembering is unlocked by unbounding time. Dear friend, thank you for the questions, for the sincerity of heart, the precision of focus, and commitment to the call for peace.
Hi, my name is Tara Betts, and I'm here in Chicago, poet, writer, editor, professor, and I am reading a poem by another poet, named Fez Ahmed Fez, and this is from a selected collection called The Rebel Silhouette. The poem itself is In Search of Vanished Blood. There's no sign of blood, not anywhere. I've searched everywhere. The executioner's hands are clean, his nails transparent. The sleeves of each assassin are spotless. No sign of blood, no trace of red, not on the edge of the knife, none on the point of the sword. The ground is without stains, the ceiling white. This blood, which has disappeared without leaving a trace, isn't a part of written history. Who will guide me to it? It wasn't spilled in service of emperors. It earned no honor, had no wish granted. It wasn't offered in rituals of sacrifice. No cup of absolution holds it in a temple. It wasn't shed in any battle. No one telegraphed it on banners of victory. But unheard, it still kept crying out to be heard. No one had the time to listen. No one the desire. It kept crying out, this orphan blood, but there was no witness. No case was filed. From the beginning, this blood was nourished only by dust. Then it turned to ashes, left no trace, became food for dust. Fez Ahmed Fez, and the poem is In Search of Vanished Blood, and hopefully we can stop more stories and more people from vanishing as well. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Zain Shukhadar. I just wanted to say thank you to Sham-e-Ali and the Asian American Writers Workshop and everyone for making this event happen. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to draw attention to what's happening in India right now, and just to draw attention as well to the rise of fascism and Islamophobia and violence against marginalized and oppressed people all over the world, because it really is a global phenomenon that requires a collective response. So I'm really glad to have the opportunity to be here with you all to talk about this and draw attention to this. And I was just planning to read to you a little bit from an excerpt of my second novel, The 30 Names of Night. The excerpt, all that you need to really know is that this story is about a transmasculine person, non-binary person, who's Syrian American and Muslim, and who is in the midst of searching for a new name and also grieving the death of his mother 5 years before. She was murdered in an Islamophobic hate crime in New York City. And so in the excerpt, you'll hear a direct address to you. And so when you hear that, it's addressed to his mother, or rather, the ghost of his mother. Unlike you, I always wanted explanations for the way God built a bird's wing. I wanted to understand the machinery of flight. First, I collected feathers, lining them up by length on my bedroom dresser. Then came the day I found a whole wing ripped from a jay by a stray cat, all the contour feathers intact. I brought it home and washed it in your tub after you'd gone to bed, letting the grime run down the drain as though making ghusl before prayer. I placed it next to the husks of robin's eggs, and the turkey feather, fat and marbled, laid on one of Tita's doilies like a spare quill. It was weeks before you discovered it by its smell. You must have stuffed it in a garbage bag to keep the rats and the raccoons away. But when I came home from school and couldn't find it, I imagined you'd opened the window and tossed the wing onto the street, where it would have fluttered down like a maple key. I spent an hour searching the sidewalk just in case, thinking I might come upon it behind a trash can or in one of the boxed-in maples in front of our building. That maybe someone's dog had picked it up and spat it out a few buildings down. I never found it. You told me to trust you, that it had been rotting, that I would find more beautiful treasures. But I've never been good at trusting what I can't see. I take the rolled up rug and lay it out apart from reams and qamars. I clasp my forearms across my chest. I asked Sami not to call me girl, but if you were here, if I told you the thing I am too afraid to say, I fear that you would see masquerade and think to yourself, that masquerades got limits. Say, the border of another boy's body on mine, or the place where my forehead touches the covered earth. Qamar's voice reciting verses brushes the night as the lights come on in the apartments across the street. When I kneel with my forehead to the ground, I paint in my mind, each stroke a feather or the sheen on an eye. I push back and stand and recite, then kneel again. I point one finger on my thigh into the east. When I close my eyes, the shape I have painted in my mind is before me as clear as the lump of waxing moon, the white-throated sparrow, the first to fall on Brooklyn. Sami once told me the moment he first believed, really believed of his own volition. He said it was a kind of knowing no one could take away. It happened a few years back, after the rooftop of a nightclub collapsed. His friend was inside when it happened, wearing an evil eye bracelet Sami had picked up for her in Cairo the year before. She was almost crushed, but one of her hands was sticking up when the rescuers came. The flashlight hit the blue of the bracelet's little eyes, and they pulled 7 people out with her. She's got a couple kids now, last Sami told me. I make dua for Teta, for Sami, for Reem, for Qamar. The light is fading. Vega, the falling eagle, hangs overhead. Once I asked Teta about the spring that the French shelled Damascus, Aleppo, Hama, and Homs, after the United Nations had finally recognized Syria as an independent nation. She told me she spent the days sequestered away inside her mother's house, tracking the movements of the white storks that migrated north to Turkey to breed in the summer, returning from their overwintering south of the Sahara. She marked the number of storks she sighted with hidden pencil marks on her windowsill and wondered to herself how the world must look to them. Imagining the world from up there was what got her through that long loneliness. The stork migration was upset that year by the shelling, and only a few storks passed over Teta's house. Once, a shell blast brought down the pale body of a stork with its pink beak and black-tipped wings. It plummeted in a line before being turned like a branch by the wind. Its wings caught the air and opened, wider than a man was tall, and its body disappeared into the orchard. This was long before my mother was born, yet Teta insisted that stork was the reason that years later my mother would come to the States armed with a degree in ornithology from a French university, an irony she never failed to comment on. One event can change everything, Teta told me, so that one small miracle placed underfoot can tumble us onto an unexpected path, and isn't that, she'd said to me then, the hand of God. I'll stop there, but thanks very much again for having me.
Hi, my name is Fariha Roshin, and I will be reading a poem called Manush Ki Bolbe today. Thank you for being here. Manush Ki Bolbe. A stinging strum, a haunting beat, the threat of the phrase against freedom's reach. Being small requires no attention, no examination, an oversimplification of the perversity of gossip, an over-identification of another's limiting belief. Who cares what they say anyway sparks an indelible synapse that leaks into my bloodstream like cyanide. Poison spoon-fed from birth so subtle, its only consequence, a life-shattering psyche split. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Aho, I'm realer than I've ever been, less ugly to myself. To be known by one's own being is salvation. It is to witness God's holy project and surrender on the basin of your scratched up knees. The mud cherishes your resilience. It asks you to pray, to awaken like clay. To be Muslim means to sublimate rage into the divine temple, the spiral of the dervish, the cry of a Qawwali, decolonize jihad, be mighty. Pull at your nafs, face it before it's too late. I'm miraculous like a vine of death, the God compound, ancestor, grandmother, the sacred purge, detour spill, the rays of polyphonic geometry, slicing into the matrix. Hiding is not an option anymore. The stop and start like a pulse, a growl. I'm becoming, can't tell me nothing. I'm who you never wanted me to be. I'm who you always wanted to be. When I dissent, I'm speaking directly to you. White teeth bare, calcified into dust. Not enough time to be alive, too young to die. I'm taking back my life. Hanuman's leap. I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Faisal Mohyuddin, and I want to start by thanking Sham-e-Ali Nayeem and the Asian American Writers Workshop for organizing this really important program. I'm actually speaking from my classroom at Highland Park High School in Illinois, and I wanted to share a poem called Bhagat Singh. Bhagat Singh is from a city currently called Faisalabad, which is where my mom is from. Before that, it was called Lyalpur, and as I've been doing research about the history of the city, I have just found him to be one of the most important people there. He was a freedom fighter. He was executed at a very young age for basically using violence as a tactic to fight for freedom. And the poem begins with an epigraph from Muhammad Ali Jinnah from 1929, while Bhagat Singh was in prison awaiting execution and on a hunger strike that lasted 116 days. And Jinnah says, "The man who goes on hunger strike has a soul. He is moved by that soul, and he believes in the justice of his cause. However much you deplore them, and however much you say they are misguided, it is the system, this damnable system of governance, which is resented by the people." Bhagat Singh. With batons they beat his comrade, Lala Lajpat Rai, whose heart would surrender to the blows. In the foam spilling from the dying man's mouth, Bhagat heard the voices of Douglas and Du Bois, and he wept at the sheer nobility of the oppressed, be they Indian or American, and thereafter he resolved to die a free man. That the Angres so wholeheartedly believed their blue eyes were celestial favors rubbed him all wrong. They were first-class thieves, the whole lot, and it mattered not what their laws said about revolution, nor which of them caught a bullet. If it would cost him his life to reclaim his life, then why hesitate? "I can kill you too," he shouted, "and I will," and he did, despite the Mahatma's insistence on nonviolence. His version of dignity had room enough for bombs, for bludgeoning hunger and thirst. For 116 days, he refused all sustenance. And in the hallucinations that ensued, his soul traveled to Mount Meru, where it spoke directly to Guru Nanak, who asserted there is nothing holier in God's eyes than truth. But Bhagat Singh blinked away the vision, insisting the only real truth was a man's own self. At 23, he and 2 others were hanged in Lahore, their bodies secretly cremated at night, their ashes tossed into the Sutlej River just as dawn was breaking. Thank you.
Bring now the angels. Bring now the angels to test your pulse as you sleep. Bring the healer, the howler, the listening ear. Bring an apothecary to mix the tincture. We need the salve, the tablet, the capsule of the hour. Bring sword eaters and those who will swallow fire. Fetch the guardian to flatten the wheelchair, to hoist it toward heaven. The public shuttle awaits the ceaseless trips to the clinic. To the bedside manner, summon witness. This medic's disdain toward patients, the physician's dismissal of pain, and call the druggist again to drug us senseless. Bring a nomad to index our debts, tuck each invoice into broken walls of regret. Call the cleric, the clerk, the messengers divine. Summon someone, collect the prayers, buried or burnt, tied to stones, sunken seas, dunked under water until all dissolves. Bring now the scribe, let it be written. There is no shepherd, no Sherpa, no moonlight guide for these, the darkest journeys of our lives. Who will lift the shuttle above the outposts of the living? Who will watch it rise and rise? Who will clear a path among all the wreckage? Who will weave a nest for all the birds of passage? Who will bridge the gap between savage and salvage? Who will sing over wilting stalks, rough husks, silk still gleaming like hair in a dream?
My name is Tanais, and I'll be reading from my book, In Sensorium, Notes for My People. And I want to dedicate this reading to my Muslim kindred in India. We are with you. We will keep agitating for your freedom and for your safety. In the ruins of the Indus Valley civilization, scientists extracted DNA from I-6-113, a female-assigned skeleton more than 4,000 years old. From the cochlea, a part of our inner ear shaped like a sea snail spiral, they determined that she had a genetic mixture of ancestral Southeast Asian hunter-gatherer and Iranian-related ancestry. What I-6-113 did not have, the steppe ancestry associated with ancestral North Indians. This study flowed back into Hindu nationalist discourse. So was the Indus Valley civilization an indigenous Vedic Aryan culture, or a Dravidian Tamil culture? Were these ancient people related to descendants in North India or South India? Let me offer a reorientation, East. My ancestors, our ancestors, were among the people who settled, migrated, labored, loved, and fucked, and lived and died in the Indus Valley. People destined to be written out of this ancient civilization because future patronymics would deny them a place in history. Their origins lay too far in the wrong direction, forever outsiders. I consider the possibility, the inevitability, that some of our ancestors from the now mysterious Indus Valley hailed from the far eastern reaches of the subcontinent, places like Bangladesh, Tripura, Assam. We will never know if I-6-113 is definitively from the eastern reaches of India. There is no place for her in Indian history if we imagine her from East Bengal. But why not? Who will ever offer me evidence proving it true or false? Don't we all want to see ourselves in history? I want to. Your people are mine. My people are yours. We can't read these ancestors' language. We can't hear their music or smell their scents, but we, their descendants, know them. We are them. You and I haven't spoken. We are separated for now, lost in your work, you on your artifacts of sound, me writing this text, making perfumes. Each composition is its own universe with its own accords, art to be experienced on other bodies, in ears, eyes, noses, bodies that will die, and so the memory of our work will die with them. Melody, musk, a scattering of shells, an ocean of vasanas that we leave for each other, for the world. They are how we remember, how we disappear, how we love. Svaha.
Hi, I'm Zena Hashembek, and I'm a Lebanese poet and the author of the forthcoming poetry collection titled Oh. I'm going to start with a ghazal called What the Returning Do. 3 years of absence bring dead things and new love. Here's the old house. What you smell is true love. Bird carcass trapped between wall and flower pot, so you do what the returning do. Love what you pound with broomstick until dried bones and feathers fall. Who, love, can say if this century is worse than others? And despite what you know and knew, love comes back as your city or your old friend dipping fries in Lebne. They ask you, love, have you been cured or are you still an optimist? Does the woman who grew love and flowers inside empty gas grenades still bring you hope? They say few love the way you do, but they forget. It's been a while. They, too, love olives, though they're tired of odes and elegies. You wake and pursue love. Look in the mirror. Read the news. Sometimes you wonder how two loves so conflicting persist. Then you remember driving away can get you through love and borders and some of the days. You can't predict what time decides. How's the view, love? I'm going to read a bilingual poem. I call these duets. They are in English and Arabic. This is called Prophecy Nubuwa. Do you still smoke? نسيت كل شيء لكني لم أرمي علبة الجيتان. We never got to watch Aznavour live مع إني أقلعت منذ عامين. My daughter thinks all the singers I listen to are dead. ابنتي تعتقد أن كل المغنين الذين أستمع إليهم ماتوا. And I keep saying things like هل سنعبر هذا الشارع بعد 60 يدا بيد في صباح يوم أحد لا شمس فيه? We will cross this street in our 60s, hand in hand, on a sunny Sunday morning. فالمدينة لا تتذكر أحدا. Or the city will not betray us. The city remembers what will come. والوحدة أقدم من الله. And the green parrots are migrating again. وأنا توقفت عن البحث عنك. And I have not stopped looking for you. Thank you.
Vanakkam, yanda Muslim family, kudumbam, makkal, amba order, kavala order. Vanakkam. There's so much to grieve. And unjust, violent loss is a particular kind of grief. As an Alange Tamil-raised Catholic, I am in solidarity with you. And in the midst of your grief and anger and fight and dreams and vision, I send and extend deep, deep love. These are frightening times. Perhaps if every raised hand were a tender call, if each roar from the sky simply a passing spring storm, if every flash in the night were a firefly, and if every body pressed against another was actually meant to comfort and warm. If this world were absent of violence and war, perhaps we'd think of fear as a delicious thing that tickles the breastbones from within, like the flutter that comes before breath turns to song, or the quickening beats of a heart slowly falling in love. Fear would be skin prickling at the sound of truth confessed, thunder so enormous it cracks in your chest. Perhaps if every flash in the night were a firefly, fear would simply be the feeling that sits next to the divine.
Resolution 1003 by June Jordan. I will love who loves me. I will love as much as I am loved. I will hate who hates me. I will feel nothing for everyone oblivious to me. I will stay indifferent to indifference. I will live hostile to hostility. I will make myself a passionate and eager lover in response to passionate and eager love. I will be nobody's fool.
Hello, I am Arshia Fatima Haq, and I am an artist working across a lot of different mediums through visual art and installation, experimental film, a little bit of sculpture, and I also work in the realm of sound. I have a club-based project and record label called Disco Style, but my first creative love was writing, so I was really happy when my dear friend and Hyderabadi sister, Sham-e-Ali Nayeem, asked me to contribute something to this collective of amazing writers and thinkers working through the idea of what it means to be writing against a genocide. I am an Indian Muslim, and I am actually recording this in India. I am in Delhi right now, and I really wanted to actually record this in my hometown on the soil of my birth in Hyderabad, but I was quite ill at the time. So I'm doing this today with a piece that I wrote also today in Delhi. I am actually getting on a flight back to Los Angeles tonight, but happy to be sharing these words from here. Like most of my works, I consider it a work perpetually in progress, unfinished, raw at the edges. And I am a bit rusty, so I hope you enjoy the piece. And I also just wanted to say that this means a lot because we, Indian Muslims in diaspora, have been talking about this impending genocide, which has been revealing itself over several years. And the talk seems to fall on deaf ears. And I know in speaking with Sham-e-Ali, and my hope for art is that it has perhaps the final potential to reach people at a subliminal level when nothing else can. So it's with this hope that I read this piece to you, which is untitled. It is not completely true what they say about a specter rising from death. I am haunted by something that is quite yet alive and pulsing. Something so ripe it is about to bloom into rot. That precise moment is where I found you. The spectre is in the burgeoning suns of saffron, their chests puffed as animals on the cusp of death throes or mating. Taking shelter under arches built by names they erase, day by day, brushstroke by brushstroke, nukta by nukta. I am haunted by this soil on which I became a human, yet animal. That soil which absorbed my mother's afterbirth and hers before mine. A soil now absorbing rapidly the verse and flower of a million tongues that came before, that will not come after. This is the precise moment I met you. The desire bloomed in the tender ravine between ripeness and rot. In another time, we could have been princes. Today, we are specters while we are quite yet alive and pulsing. But that salt of night, a boy whose wrists were as thin as mine, veins of a hunted bird, and I became human, yet animal again. That night blooms into a lantern in the growing darkness.
My name is Loveland Usman, and this poem is from the Kitchen Dweller's Testimony. Connotation. Walk as God intended, straight, even, not prostrating, a shadow, and not too proud. I have the complex my father warned against. When the woman whose hair is like down spits near my shoe and says, "This neighborhood has changed since these people came," I can't say, "You are the spitter. You are the trash." I'm the shadow prostrating, not the shadow as it lengthens, water spilling from a heavy bucket. Can you smell my scalp through my scarf? Earth after water licks it.
Hi, I'm Tarfia Faizullah, and this is Because There's Still a Sky, Junebug. I turn on the porch light so the insects will come, so my skin, the drink of you, can marvel at how quickly it becomes enraged, a luscious feast. I'm waiting to hear myself crystallize with revelation. Who stands guard at rooms locked into tombs? Who will dictate the order in which we're consumed? I turned the light off, but who taught me to stay quiet when the power is down? You're so sweet, men say to me, but tonight I want no one. Tonight, a drone in Yemen detonates and rends the sky. And in my father's garden, drone is a stingless bee unable to make honey. I crush the antenna. Regard the exoskeleton. Do we ever learn that we're given weapons to be vicious so we can be sweet? I look up because there is still a sky, the June bug that whirs across it, because there is still a headscarfed girl who sucks the sugar from a ginger candy before she explodes. I look up and the sky still flints with so many stars. Above me, above you. Thank you.
I'm Walida Imarisha.
I'm Taria Autry, and together we are Good Sister,
Bad Sister.
The poem we'll be sharing with you today is called Our Bodies as Battlefields.
And we're honored to be part of the Our Existence is a Rebellion event. We stand against state-sanctioned violence in India, just as we do anywhere and everywhere else around the globe.
There was no declaration of war. We had no idea the destruction in store.
The beaten lips and fractured bones, the burning beds and disintegrated homes, battered wives or captured urban soldiers.
Our lands, families, and minds taken over, Sisters' flesh on killing fields, strange fruit, the only yield.
The face that launched 1,000 ships.
Backs that bore the brunts of whips.
The empire's wealth, a product of marketability based on love-hate relationships to the gendered body.
Patriarchs' pockets lined with the surpluses of misogyny, our inferior status explained away as destiny.
Sliced bellies from a bayonet or a back alley abortion.
No SOS on the radio, only distortion.
Little kids play house in war zones.
The constant low-intensity warfare of thinner hips and straightened hair.
Emaciated, starving frames, objectified bodies with no names. Napalm burned, blistered roots, styles dictated by corporate suits.
Whether heat-seeking missiles fired in Iraq
or cops shooting up the block.
Ground zero radiates between swollen thighs covered in flimsy rags by politicians' lies.
Flags stuck into the flesh of my chest, pipelines sucking sustenance, no rest for the sake of a godless newborn West.
Because their survival takes precedent over all other inhabitants.
And from the free world to the penitentiary, people are viewed as mere machinery to birth the future's military.
Debased and devalued postpartum when Uncle Sam has no more use for them.
Our pain is worn down pasts.
And washed up futures.
Our wounds are cauterized by machine gun sutures.
They expect us to develop commandeering mentalities to match their conquistador fantasies.
And white supremacist ideologies.
Try to colonize our mindset.
Even our flesh becomes suspect.
We have a scorched earth policy when it comes to our bodies,
our beauty,
our psyches.
If I can't have you, no one will.
Jealous partners cut brake wires and jilted world superpowers start global fires.
And we become refugees in our own homes.
No refuge in the demilitarized zone.
Land strafed and split.
Rebels build explosives from ash, dirt, and spit.
But our weapons will be broken noses skewered by barbed wire and borders.
Bodega-built bombs.
Broken glass glinting at dawn.
Our skin cracked and bruised stretches as shelter.
Attitudes and temperatures swelter.
Our corpses stacked like wood. Genocide tactically understood. Combat boots kick out our teeth as we struggle to speak our lived realities.
More than just casualties, because politicians fight wars on our bodies. It's the only battlefield they can always reach, but we are never obsolete. We economic commodities reject landmines implanted in our bodies.
Forced genetic modification.
Inert bomb sterilization to stop the rise of a rebellious nation.
We are the weapon we have wanted.
The rock with which tanks are confronted.
Landmines laying dormant until triggered by torment.
We are the determination of the martyr.
Firstborn daughter, fire starter.
Smoke.
On the sky.
Our last breath
will not die.
J Beam. My name is Tanmori Sandarajan, and I am a Dalit American writer and founder of the Dalit Civil Rights Organization, Equality Labs. And it is with a serious and grave heart that I'm here to add a small portion of my upcoming book, The Trauma of Caste, to this conversation about the growing crisis of genocide in India. I hope you enjoy this short work, and it comes from the section that is the conclusion of my book. There's a beautiful story of the Buddha from before he achieved enlightenment. As he was sitting in meditation under the Bodhi tree, demonic forces tried to take him. The demon king demanded that the Buddha produce a witness that he was spiritually awake. One of Buddha's hands was touching the earth, and that was his response to the demon's demand. The earth says, "I am your witness." And just like that, the demons vanished and the Buddha achieved enlightenment. When people are caught up in their wound and the thrall of dehumanization, They are fundamentally broken apart from life. And this act of touching the earth can be a reminder of our interconnectedness, which makes genocide impossible. Even now, we can choose life. The opposite of genocide is life. And choosing life means touching the earth and reconnecting. When we turn away from death and touch the earth, perhaps we can see the way to life, a life that can be awakened if we truly understand our link to the earth, the complex and loving support it provides for us, which we can then provide in turn to other living beings. And if we would do so, perhaps we would have the courage to put down the sword and open slowly for another way. Our enemy could one day simply become a fellow being connected to the source of life. And together we could look with clear eyes at the bloody history that we share. We could restory our lives and return gently to creating a sense of meaning and identity with dignity. We could let the earth bear witness to that. And it might feel impossible to do this. The train of genocide might feel unstoppable as the flow of capital and white supremacy and Brahmanism and global apathy greases the tracks for its inevitability. But as Professor Cornel West reminds us, never forget that justice is what love looks like in public. And every Dalit who is alive can tell you that when we are rooted in love, we are rooted in an unstoppable force that can make the impossible possible for all of us. The only reason we are here is because our ancestors loved us so much that they sacrificed for us to be here. And every breath we take is a gift of that love and the potential of the healing power of life. In testimonies of every genocide that we've ever had on the subcontinent, you will hear unspeakable acts of desecration. But there are always stories of people who survived because their neighbors and friends chose life. And they turned away under the intense pressure of the death cult to give shelter, to give succor, to say, we are interconnected despite it all. And that perhaps is one of the biggest lessons of what love can do in the time of genocide. I am so clear that by writing this, there may be attempts to slander and deplatform me, feeble attempts to distract from the terror of the truth I am sharing. But I'm not here from a place of ego. I am here to serve the species. This is not my truth, but a truth that millions are holding with fear. It is my duty to speak this with courage and empathy, for I love all of us, and I extend loving kindness to all of the suffering and trembling hearts dreading what comes next. I am a survivor of dehumanization. I have been called unspeakable things, and I can tell you that the consequences of being dehumanized is that you are more tender. You tremble at the fact of having to tell your truth. And yet the truth is this tremendous vehicle that frees you to face my perpetrators, to face those who deny caste and deny, even in this moment, genocide. Despite deep fear and anxiety, I can tell you that the courage to be able to speak this truth is not from me. It's from many generations before me who have already faced the terrors of caste and who want this to end in our lifetime. If all of us can find it within ourselves to speak out, to act with courage, imagine what could happen. When I think about the darkness of this moment, the staggering amount of infrastructure that has already been put into place for this terrible shadow of genocide, and how much despair exists in people's hearts, writing a love letter might seem a strange response. And yet I believe this is precisely the kind of medicine that people need. It reminds me of Rilke in his book, Letters to a Young Poet, where he writes, perhaps everything that frightens us is in its deepest essence something helpless that needs and wants our love. Can we love ourselves and confront our terrors so that we can return our moment back to light? For wherever there have been humans, And wherever there's been the darkest hours of human history, there have always been those who hold up the light. And that's because the moral law of the universe trends towards life. And genocide is the ultimate failure to that law of life. To choose life, then, is to say we work to stop genocide before it begins in earnest. The world must stand up and say, no, never again. This is the need of the hour. Thank you, and JB.
Hey everyone, my name is Sunny Singh. It's an honor to be a part of this event. Our existence is a rebellion. As a Sikh, I am here in part in solidarity with Indian Muslims who in particular are under attack right now. But you know, our community as Sikhs, we're no strangers to this kind of state repression from the Indian government as well as other sort of repressive forces. And we know that our struggles are intertwined, right? Our enemy is the same, and that enemy right now looks like the Modi administration, right? It looks like Hindu nationalism that is spread throughout India and even in the diaspora. And as a musician, it's really important to me to speak out about these issues. And I'm about to share a music video of mine that really celebrates and draws attention to the protest movement against Modi's draconian policies, the Citizenship Amendment Act and the National Registry of Citizenship, which were put into place late in 2019 and met with a massive movement of resistance. Based in Shaheen Bagh in Delhi, a working class Muslim neighborhood, really led by working class Muslim women. This incredible encampment, you'll see images from it shortly, and then really spread throughout India and throughout the world. Many of us participated in solidarity protests at the Indian embassy here in New York as well. So I wanted to shed a light on this movement, and in doing so, uplift a shabad, a devotional poem from my community written by Guru Arjan in the 16th century called Koi Bole Ram. And the idea is very simple, right? It's that many different communities refer to the divine by different names, by different words. Different faith and religious communities have different ways of worshiping, right? Different rituals, different practices. And these are all valid and these are all beautiful, and we're all talking about the same thing here. It's such a simple, basic idea, but unfortunately, we still need to be reminded of it today, it seems, because what's happening in India right now sort of flies in the face of Guru Arjan's revolutionary message of oneness, unity, and religious pluralism and love. So let's hold that in our hearts as we move forward this evening. I hope you enjoy the video. I hope it lifts your spirits to see these incredible folks resisting Hindu nationalism. Thank you. Azadi! 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 कृपा तार रहीम, कारिन करिन करीम, कृपा तार रहीम, कारिन करिन करीम, कृपा तार रहीम, कारिन करिन करीम, कृपा तार रहीम, कृपा तार रहीम, कृपा तार रहीम। कोई बोले राम राम, कोई बोले राम राम, कोई खुदा है, कोई सेवे गुस्सैया, कोई अल्लाह है। कोई बोले राम राम, कोई खुदा है, कोई सेवे गुस्सैया, कोई अल्लाह है। कोई बोले राम राम, कोई खुदा
Thank you to everyone that joined us today. I also wanted to send a heartfelt thank you to each of the poets and writers who so generously shared their work, and thank you to the Asian American Writers Workshop. Please head over to aaww.org to get updates, workshop updates, and any other information. And, you know, the deepest thanks to all the poets and the writers who are resisting tyranny, who are resisting oppression, who are resisting genocide, and the states that sanction genocide. Thank you so much.